My name is Fiona Daly. I'm a sustainable textile designer maker and hand weaver from Ireland. I studied my BA in textile design at the National College of Art and Design in Ireland. And then I later studied for my master's in UAL Chelsea in London, graduating in 2019. And then following that, I did a residency at 8B in early 2020 for almost 3 months. My practice is craft and research led, focusing on sustainability, local wool production, use of rare sheep breeds wools, and weave design. I'm inspired by the fibre shed concept of creating a regional boundary for making a localised supply chain for fibre throughout its life cycle. I'm passionate about local wool production, breed conservation, and biodiversity, which is my motivation to be involved with this project at the Wild Spinning Mill in Odsherred and contribute towards creating a circular textile economy in the municipality. I was delighted to be able to work on this project remotely from my studio in London, and the following slides will give you an insight into my design process for this mini collection. My practice focuses on using the wool of Northern European short-tailed sheep breeds, and for this project I decided to stick with that as my material choice. So I chose to work with two breeds which fall within that family that are local to the area, and that would be Spelsau and Gotland. These images are from my residency last year, which you can see. For my design concept, I had three starting points. I began by researching the Geopark in Odsherred, and three things stood out to me, and that was the glacial landscape, these undulating hills, and that really struck me when I was there in the landscape, these kind of big curvaceous forms, and I discovered they're called Odsherred arches. And another aspect was the coastline, the varied coastline of the area, and what comes with that is a huge array of different types of seaweed, which I'm also very interested in. And I've included dance tang there because in my research I found a lot of their beautiful images, and I use them as a starting point for my visual research. And the third element to it was I was quite interested in the Lammerfjord area of Odsherred. It's a fjord which is filled in and has really rich, fertile land. And as a result, there's loads of agricultural food crops there. And I was interested in using the vegetables or the food crops that wouldn't be eaten and would be otherwise wasted as natural dye stuff. Which leads on to my next point. So in terms of colour, I stuck with three different vegetables for the natural dyeing, and those are red cabbage, beetroot, and carrots. I had most success with the red cabbage and the beetroot, and the variations depending on the pH balance of the dye bath. So all of these began with a white Spelsau wool base. The carrot wasn't so successful. And as I said, my vision with this was to use the agricultural food crop waste that otherwise wouldn't be used. So in terms of my visual research, I focused on seaweed, and I focused on two different types of seaweed. That would be the sugar kelp and the dulse. And I began doing lots of drawings in my notebook from these different images that I found, photos that I found. And then another aspect of it of the design development is the glacial landscape. So I focused on the highest point in Odsherred, which is Verhoy, and I looked at a topographic map. So I was quite fascinated with these different lines, but also the connection between the undulating hills of the landscape with an undulating twill weave structure. And I wanted to translate, I picked certain contour lines on the map, and I wanted to translate them into a weave structure. So on the right, you can see where I've done that with two different lines, 92.5 and 105. And then, so combining all of these elements together, after doing a lot of drawing on graph paper, I got sampling on the Loom. So in the top right, you can see an indication of the color palette that I'm working with the naturally dyed. And I also included a madder dyed yarn, spelsa wool yarn, because I wanted something quite strong, quite a strong color too. Then in the samples below that, on the right, this is my initial sample of my kelp motif. And here, so it's a double cloth weave structure, and I was, the top one is experimenting with plain weave, so it's quite a smooth texture. And then below, the bottom one is using the undulating structure from the contour line in the map, and you can see that's quite textured. It looks quite different. Okay. And then when designing the project or the weave design, I was designing with the end in mind, which is a key concept in sustainable design. So I had the idea of my product, so backpack, in my mind when I was planning my weave. So I planned it out that there would be zero wastage in the pattern making, and that there's zero cuts. It's simply just folded and seamed. Then the back panel, it's made of wool felt, and I envisaged that to be made of Gotland wool, probably the coarser hairs that might not be more suitable for yarn. And then the rope, the wool rope, again, that would be waste wool, so much coarser yarns, or the guard hairs that might otherwise be wasted. And this is my mini collection, the two other products in my mini collection. So the first one, the Dulce Petals, is also a backpack. So that's in the same construction as my prototype in the exhibition. So this is using the Dulce pattern motif combined with the undulating weave structure. The color is inspired by the Dulce, so kind of reddy pinks. And the yarns here are beetroot and madder dyed yarns combined to create like a red fade. And the third product in my mini collection is a jumper. And this is woven over 24 shafts. It's a double weave structure again. And it's using the Dulce petal motifs combined with the 105 topographic contour line weave structure. And I've put in the suggestion of alpaca yarns to make the jumper, and that's because of its suitability for next to skin wearing. And this would be in natural greys and also dyed with red cabbage and beetroot. And now I'll leave you with some images of my final prototype design, the Kelp Ribbon Verhoy 92.5 backpack.